What if the richest part of your life is the part you haven't lived yet? What if peace isn't something you find at the end, but something you design each day, starting now? Are you living or just moving through time? There comes a moment, often quietly after 60, when we stop chasing what's next and start asking, what truly matters now? Welcome, dear listener, to Mindful Footsteps. This is not just a YouTube channel. It is a quiet path, a digital sangha, for those ready to live more mindfully, more gently, more awake. Whether you are retired, semi-retired, or simply tired of living on autopilot, here you'll find not instructions, but invitations. Invitations to soften, to reflect, and to begin again. If this message touches something inside you, like this video, to let others find stillness too. Share it with someone whose heart is also listening. Subscribe to walk with us, one mindful step at a time. Let us begin. Part 1. The Illusion of Time. Returning to the present. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a calendar and wondered where the last 10 years went? Not in a philosophical way, but truly wondered, did I really live those years, or did I just move through them? You see, when we were children, time didn't feel like it does now. Do you remember? One summer afternoon felt endless. The hum of cicadas, the warm air brushing your skin, a single ice cream cone melting down your fingers. That was eternity. But now, a year disappears in what feels like a month. We blink, and another birthday passes, another winter, another name we forget to call. So what happened? A wise elder once whispered to me while folding his robes in the dim morning light, time was never running. I was. The Buddha taught that time is not a fixed stream. It's a sensation. It's tied directly to our awareness. When we're present, truly present, even a single breath becomes vast and full. But when we live on autopilot, scrolling, rushing, doing, days collapse like dominoes. Have you noticed how fast your life moves when it's filled with repetition? Wake up, coffee, emails, traffic, dinner, news, sleep, repeat, and then suddenly, 10 years vanish. Story: Clara by the lake. During a mindfulness retreat in Oregon, I sat beside a woman named Clara. She was 78, elegant and thoughtful, with silver hair that shimmered like the lake we sat beside. As we sipped tea under a maple tree, she said quietly, "I don't remember most of my life, not because I didn't live it, but because I wasn't really there." That sentence hit me like a bell. Clara had lived a full life. She had raised children, worked hard, paid her dues, but her attention had been elsewhere. And in Buddhist teaching, where your attention goes, your life follows. A thought to reflect on. If your life were a bookshelf, how many volumes are vivid memories, and how many are blank pages because you were too distracted to write them? That is the illusion of time. We think time is moving fast, but really, it's our presence that is shrinking. A modern truth from ancient insight science now echoes what the Buddha taught 2,600 years ago. The more novel, meaningful, and mindful our experiences, the more richly they are remembered. That's why time feels slow when we travel to a new place, fall in love, or sit with a dying parent. Our awareness spikes. Life becomes crisp again. But routine dulls perception. This is what Buddhists call spiritual drowsiness, living life in a loop without noticing it. And I wonder, when was the last time you truly noticed your own breath, or the sound of birds outside your window, or the color of your loved one's eyes when they laugh? These aren't poetic questions. They're spiritual doorways. What can you do today? We reclaim time, not by adding more hours, but by deepening each moment. And you don't need to retreat to a monastery to do this. You can begin right now. Brush your teeth in silence. Notice the texture, the movement, the breath. Eat without a screen. Taste your food as though it were your first meal. Sit by a window. Watch light shift across the floor for 5 minutes. That's it. These are not insignificant actions. These are acts of rebellion against a world that says rush when your soul whispers rest. Pause and reflect. Take a breath. Right now. Yes, now. Not a shallow one, but a full present breath. Inhale. Feel it. Exhale. Feel it leave. Now ask yourself, where is my time going? And more importantly, where is my attention going? Because in the end, you are not running out of time. You are running out of presence. But the good news? Presence doesn't take time. It only takes this moment, and this one again. Audience interaction prompt. Let's pause for a moment together. What is one thing you do every day on autopilot that you want to reclaim with mindfulness? Type it in the comments. Share one daily habit you'll bring awareness to. And let's remind each other that we still have time to wake up. Shall we keep walking this path together? In the next chapter, we'll explore something even deeper. What actually matters once we wake up, and what doesn't. But before we get there, let me ask you one more thing. If today were the only day you could truly experience, how would you live it? Part 2. What truly matters? The Dharma of priorities. Close your eyes with me, just for a moment. Now, imagine yourself 30 years from today. You are lying in your final days. Breath slowing, room quiet, the light from the window spilling softly across the sheets. And now, ask yourself, what would bring peace? Would it be one more email sent? One more meeting squeezed into your calendar? Would it be your bank statement? Or would it be something else? Most people, when truly honest at the edge of life, say the same thing. I wish I had more time with those I love. I wish I had been more present. I've sat with the dying. I've listened with no agenda, no clipboard, no fix-it mentality, just presence. And I can tell you this with absolute clarity. No one asks for their resume. They ask for their relationships. They ask, did I love well? Did I live deeply? Did I make space for what really mattered? Story. Helen, the hospice nurse. Helen was a nurse who spent over 4 decades bringing people into this world and helping others leave it. She once said to me, while we folded blankets in the quiet of a hospice hallway, no one has ever asked me to read them their bank balance. They ask for hands to hold, for peace, for time they never made. She wasn't bitter. She was simply awake, and her words remain one of the clearest Dharma lessons I've ever received, not from a scripture, but from a soul who had witnessed life and death over and over again. What Helen understood, and what many of us forget, is that most of what we call urgent is not important. And most of what's truly important rarely screams for our attention. We are taught to chase busyness, to worship productivity, to prove our worth by how much we can do. But there is a question I want to gently place in your heart. Have you been busy, or have you been full? Because they are not the same. The Buddha's 5 recollections. The Buddha, in his deep compassion for human forgetfulness, offered us what he called the 5 recollections, a daily reminder for every practitioner. 1. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no escaping aging. 2. I am of the nature to become ill. There is no escaping sickness. 3. I am of a nature to die. There is no escaping death. 4. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. 5. My actions are my only true belongings. These teachings are not meant to frighten. They are meant to clarify, to cut through the fog, to invite you to ask, what am I spending this brief and precious life on? And perhaps more importantly, why? Practice. The deathbed perspective. There is a beautiful, if slightly uncomfortable meditation I often offer in Dharma talks. I call it the deathbed perspective. Each morning, before the noise begins, before the phone lights up, or the world makes demands of you, sit down, just for 2 minutes. Place your hand over your heart and ask, if today were my last full day on earth, what would truly matter? Then pause. Don't rush the answer. Let it come from your heart, not your habit. And when the answer arrives, whether it's call my daughter, or forgive my brother, or simply sit in the garden and breathe, let that answer guide your day, not your task list, not your inbox, not even your calendar, but your truth. A question for you. So now I offer the same question to you, gently. If today were your last full day, what would matter most? Would you slow down? Would you make that phone call you've been putting off? Would you sit longer with your morning tea? Leave your answer in the comments. Not for me, but for yourself. Let it be your small declaration of awakening. Because the truth is, we don't need more time to find peace. We just need more clarity about what we're using our time for. And once we know what matters, everything else becomes much easier to release. Part 3. Sacred relationships, healing. What still hurts? At the edge of life, it is not our achievements that call to us. It is not our titles, nor our possessions. It is our relationships. The ones we nurtured, the ones we neglected, and often, the ones we never repaired. I've sat with elders whose eyes still glisten when they speak of people they haven't seen in decades. Not because they hate them, but because they miss them and don't know how to begin again. One woman once said to me, I don't regret the mistakes. I regret the silences. Story. Roy and the letter. Never Sent Roy was 85 when he told me about his younger brother. They hadn't spoken in over 30 years. The cause of their falling out? Neither of them really remembered. I've written letters, he said. More than a few, but I never mailed them. I asked gently, why not? He paused for a long moment, then answered with raw honesty, I think I was too proud. And then I thought it was too late. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever held on to something, not because you wanted to, but because letting go meant surrendering your sense of being right? In Buddhist teaching, we are reminded of this profound truth. Hatred is never ended by hatred. It is ended only by love. This is an eternal law. But let's be clear, forgiveness is not always about reunion. Sometimes it's not about mending a relationship on the outside. Sometimes it's about setting down the weight we've been carrying on the inside. Unspoken threads we carry. So many of us walk through life with invisible cords trailing behind us, some warm, some frayed, some painfully tangled, a mother we stopped calling, a sibling we can't quite forgive, a friendship that faded without closure, a version of ourselves we haven't yet reconciled with. And the truth is, the longer we carry those knots of emotion, the more they shape how we see the world and how we see ourselves. They live in our body, in the tension in our shoulders, in the tightness in our breath, in the dreams that won't quite leave us alone. So I ask you now, who are you still carrying? What words are still sitting inside your heart, waiting for a voice? You may never speak them out loud, but you can still speak them from the heart. Practice Metta Bhavana, loving kindness for the unspoken. One of the most gentle and powerful practices in Buddhism is Metta Bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. You don't need to talk to the person. You don't need to fix the past. You only need to close your eyes, bring them to mind, and say quietly but sincerely, I forgive you. I release you. May you be well. Say it not for them, but for yourself, to release the energy, to reclaim your heart. This practice is not about erasing history. It's about rewriting your relationship to it, rebuilding bridges brick by brick. Sometimes reconnection is possible, sometimes it's not. But even when reconciliation isn't, peace is. You can rebuild a relationship with just a single act. A short message, I'm thinking of you. A handwritten card. A prayer whispered before sleep. And even if that person is no longer living, you can still release your grip on the story. Because the story, in truth, is living inside you. A question for you. Is there someone you've been meaning to reach out to? Someone who crosses your mind from time to time? You don't have to fix everything, but perhaps you could take one small step toward healing. Leave a comment. Who will you send loving kindness to today? You don't need to name them, but you can say, I'm releasing someone today. Let it be your quiet act of freedom. Because in the end, it is not how many people we knew that defines our life. It is how deeply we loved and how courageously we returned to love, even when it felt hard. Part 4. The Temple of the Body, Compassionate Health. There comes a moment in every life, quiet, undeniable, when the body begins to whisper and then it begins to speak louder, a slower rise from bed, a twinge in the knees, a forgotten name, a softer step. And in these moments, many people feel frustration or fear. They think, my body is failing me. But the Buddha offered another view. He taught Kayagata Sati, mindfulness of the body, as the very first foundation of awakening. Not the mind, not the breath, the body. Why? Because the body is not the enemy. It is the gateway. It holds the full story of your life, your joys, your grief, your strength, your survival. And now, in this stage of life, it is not asking for control, it is asking for care. Story, Grace's cane. I met Grace during a mindfulness retreat in Northern California. She was 74, radiant, recovering from hip surgery. Once, she had been a dancer, graceful, strong, unshakable. But now she walked with a cane and a quiet ache. One evening, as we practiced walking meditation in a garden full of pine trees, she said to me, I used to feel betrayed by my body, like it left me behind. But now, each step I take feels like a prayer. I thought I needed to be strong again, but maybe I just needed to be kind. What Grace discovered is something the Dharma reminds us again and again. Healing is not the same as fixing. Sometimes, it's simply the act of listening. Aging as an invitation. We live in a culture that worships youth, smooth skin, fast strides, high energy, endless productivity. But the body was never meant to move in one direction forever. It was meant to change, evolve, slow down, like the moon across the night sky. Buddhism invites us to treat the aging body not as a problem, but as a temple, a sacred, temporary home. We bow to it. We tend to it. We offer it the same reverence we would offer the Buddha's own image. Pain becomes a teacher, stillness becomes wisdom, and the body itself becomes part of the path. Practice the body scan. You don't need incense or silence or sacred music. You only need presence. Try this. Sit or lie down. Close your eyes. Bring your awareness slowly through your body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, not to judge, not to fix, but to say, "Thank you, feet, for carrying me. Thank you, hands, for holding so much. Thank you, breath, for never giving up on me." Move gently, and if emotion arises, let it. Sometimes grief is tucked inside the shoulders. Sometimes forgiveness lives in the hips. Let it move. Let it soften. This is not indulgence. It's devotion. A gentle question. When was the last time you asked your body, "What do you need?" and then listened? Not with a plan to push it harder, but with a willingness to befriend it, just as it is. Your body is not broken. It is seasoned. It is softened by time, carved by experience. It does not need to be perfect. It needs to be honored. Audience invitation. I invite you now to share one thing your body has taught you in recent years. Type it in the comments below. Let's speak to each other with compassion, not comparison. Because beneath all these aging bodies are souls still longing to be seen. And when we treat the body as sacred, we begin to realize something profound. We are not here to conquer the body. We are here to come home to it. Part 5. Purpose after retirement, becoming again. Retirement is often seen as an ending. The calendar clears, the phone quiets, the morning rush disappears. But what if retirement isn't the end of your work, but the beginning of a different kind, the inner work? Because there comes a moment when the world no longer defines you by a title, and in that space, a sacred question arises. Who am I now? Story. Richard the architect. I met Richard at a mindfulness retreat in Colorado. He had spent over 40 years designing buildings, hospitals, libraries, city halls, spaces that would stand long after he was gone. He was respected, precise, unfailingly productive. And yet, a year into retirement, he sat across from me with a quiet ache in his voice. "I don't know who I am if I'm not building something," he said. He wasn't grieving the job itself. He was grieving the sense of purpose that came with it. This is something many people never talk about. We spend decades becoming useful, and then suddenly, we're asked to simply be. It can feel like a loss, but in Buddhism, this moment has a name. Sankhara, the habit of becoming. The Buddha spoke of sankhara, mental formations, habits of doing, patterns of becoming. We become the parent, the provider, the expert, the helper. And we wear those roles so long we forget they're not who we are. They're just who we've been. But the Dharma reminds us, you are allowed to change. You're allowed to return to yourself. Your identity is not a fixed job description. It is a living path, a journey still unfolding. And even now, especially now, your heart is still capable of becoming. A new kind of work. What if your Dharma now is not about output, but about offering? Reading to children at the library, teaching a neighbor to cook, planting a small garden with attention, listening to someone without needing to fix them. These are not retirement hobbies. They are acts of devotion. The Buddha once said, "Your work is to discover your work, and then to give your heart to it." And sometimes, your true work is not something you do. It's something you are. To be a calm presence. To be a witness to someone's pain. To be the kind of stillness this frantic world is starving for. A question for you. What brings your heart alive now, not what used to? Not what's expected, but what stirs your soul today in this season of your life? Leave a comment. What is one quiet gift you feel called to share in this chapter? It might be a story, a meal, a moment of silence with someone who needs it. Share it, not because you have to, but because when you name it, you honor it. A final thought. You may no longer have deadlines, but you still have days. You still have mornings that ask, what will you do with this light? You may not be building offices anymore, but you are still building something. Maybe now, you are building peace. Maybe now, you are building wisdom. Maybe now, you are building the kind of presence only time can shape. And what you build now may not be seen by the world, but it will be felt by the people who sit near you, listen to you, and love you. Part 6. Creative expression, art as meditation. There is a quiet myth many of us carry, that creativity is for the young, that it belongs to the talented, to professionals, to artists. But the truth? Creativity belongs to anyone still breathing. And you, in this very moment, are filled with more beauty, more wisdom, and more stories than ever before. You are not too old to create. You are ripe. You have lived. You have felt deeply. And that richness within you is waiting, not for applause, but for expression. Story. Martha and her paintings on cardboard. Martha was 71 when she first picked up a paintbrush, not in a class, not at a workshop, but in her garage. She had just lost her husband. Her children had long since moved away. The house had grown quiet, almost too quiet. So she began painting on the backs of old cardboard boxes, sunrises, birds in flight, bowls of fruit, abstract memories in shades of blue and gold. I never painted before, she told me, but now that it's quiet, I just see colors. She didn't need to be taught technique. She needed to be given permission to notice. What Martha discovered is something we often forget. Creativity is not about art. It's about presence. It's about entering the moment with full attention. It's about touching something real inside you and letting it move outward. And in that way, creativity becomes a form of meditation. Everyday art. You don't need to paint to be creative. When you cook with care, you are creating beauty. When you sing softly while folding laundry, you are meditating. When you write a letter by hand, you are shaping something sacred. Even arranging flowers in a jar with quiet love is a poem without words. Every act done with presence becomes a brushstroke of the soul. In Buddhism, this is often referred to as mindful engagement, an active stillness, where doing and being become one. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to be perfect. You don't even need to be good. You only need to show up with sincerity. Practice. Show up for beauty. Try this. Choose something small and creative today. Doodle on the corner of a notepad. Write a poem with only 4 lines. Hum a melody while walking. Bake a loaf of bread and decorate it like it matters. Do it not for others, not to post, not to prove. Do it because your spirit longs to speak, and beauty is one of its languages. And if something in you whispers, "I'm not creative," gently respond, "I am alive," and that is enough. A question for you. What is one creative impulse you've ignored? One song? One craft? One story you've carried for years but never written down? Bring it to the surface. And if you're willing, share it with us in the comments. You don't need to finish it. You only need to begin. Because often, in beginning, you return to yourself. A final thought. You are not here to impress. You are here to express. And sometimes, The most sacred offering we can make is a simple act done with love, offered with no expectation. Just like a flower blooming in the forest with no audience, yet still blooming anyway. Part 7. Emotional wisdom, making peace with the past. Even at 80, we can still carry the sadness of 20, a sentence said in anger. A door closed too early. A moment we thought we had forgotten until suddenly we haven't. Some wounds don't age, they just wait. And in the stillness of life's later years, when the noise quiets and the roles fall away, those long silent emotions begin to whisper again, not to punish us, but to be held, to be heard, to be healed. Story: Arthur's grief. Arthur was 81. He had white hair, clear eyes, and a calm presence that made him seem untouchable. We were 3 days into a silent retreat when he disappeared from the afternoon session. I found him outside, sitting near a garden wall, tears quietly falling down his cheeks. When I asked if he was okay, he simply said, "I just remembered something I said to my wife 40 years ago, and I never made it right." 40 years, not forgotten, still living quietly in the cave of his heart. You see, Buddhism teaches us that emotions are not problems. They are not flaws or failures. They are weather patterns. They arise, they pass, they return. But we are not the storm. We are the sky, spacious, still, capable of witnessing without collapsing. And the practice is not to stop the emotions. It is to stop identifying with them, to meet them like guests at your door, unexpected, maybe even unwelcome, but worthy of your presence. The RAIN practice. There is a gentle practice from Buddhist psychology, popularized by teachers like Tara Brach. It's called RAIN, and it offers a way to hold even our deepest wounds with compassion. R. Recognize, notice what is happening. This is grief. This is shame. This is regret. A. Allow. Let it be there. No resistance, no fixing, just space. I. Investigate not with judgment but with care. Where do you feel it in the body? What does it need? N. Nurture. Place a hand on your chest. Speak gently to yourself. It's okay to feel this. I forgive myself for not knowing better then. You're not weak for crying. You're wise for staying. Because emotional maturity isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of kindness when pain arrives. Healing is not about rewriting the past. You can't change what happened, but you can change how you hold it. You can loosen your grip. You can rewrite your relationship to the memory. You can take a breath today and say, I didn't know then what I know now. I may have hurt others, but I can choose to live more gently now. I am still growing, even now. A question for you. Is there something you've been carrying for years? A regret? A conversation never finished? A part of yourself you've struggled to forgive? If you feel safe, share it in the comments, or simply write, I am learning to let go. Sometimes, the most powerful healing begins with the smallest confession, not to the world, but to yourself. A final reflection. Your emotions are not your enemy. They are your teachers. And tears are not a weakness. They are wisdom, softened into water. So let yourself feel. Let yourself heal. And remember, the sky has seen many storms, but it has never been broken by a single one. Part 8. Money and Time. Redefining Wealth. We spend the first half of life trading time for money. And then, in the second half, we spend money trying to buy back the time we lost. And somewhere in between, we forget what real wealth actually is. It's not in our bank accounts. It's not in the square footage of our homes. It's not in the brand names of our clothing. Real wealth is the ability to live with a free heart, to give without fear, to spend time, not just money, on what truly matters. Story: Charles and the Fortress. Charles was a retired attorney, sharp-minded, well-respected, and undeniably wealthy. He had climbed the ladder, made all the right moves, and amassed more than enough. One afternoon, as we drank tea on a quiet porch, he said something I'll never forget. "I spent 40 years building a life of things, but I forgot to build a life I actually loved. And then, more softly, I built a fortress, but I never learned how to live inside it." His words were not bitter. They were awakening. The Buddha's teaching on wealth. The Buddha never said that money is wrong. He taught kings and merchants. He accepted support from the wealthy. But he warned about clinging, about the illusion that money could protect us from impermanence. What he encouraged instead was generosity. "If you knew what I know about the power of giving," he said, "you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it." Because generosity doesn't just help others, it frees you from fear, from attachment, from the endless hunger for more. A shift in perspective. What if wealth had less to do with accumulation and more to do with how you use what you have? What if true richness was the ability to offer your presence freely, buy a friend a cup of tea without a second thought, give anonymously, expecting nothing in return, cook a simple meal and serve it with love? These moments, though quiet, are profoundly abundant, because they feed not the ego, but a heart, and the heart, when nourished, becomes the most generous thing in the world. Practice. Redefine your currency. Try this in the days ahead. Spend less on things that fill shelves. Spend more on moments that fill souls. Buy someone's coffee without telling them. Donate, not for recognition, but for freedom. Cook for a friend. Walk with someone who's lonely. Listen, fully, generously, without multitasking. These small acts may not make headlines, but they will make a life. And slowly, you may notice something unexpected. You begin to feel rich. Not because of how much you have, but because of how much you no longer need. A question for you. When do you feel most wealthy? When holding a check? Or when holding someone's hand? When checking your bank balance? Or when sharing a meal with no hurry? Leave a comment. Tell me. What makes you feel rich, truly, deeply, soulfully rich? Your answer may remind someone else of what really matters. A final reflection. The world may define wealth by numbers, but the Dharma defines it by presence. You are wealthier than you think if you can sit quietly, breathe deeply, give freely, and ask for nothing in return. Let your life become a gift, and in giving it, watch how full it becomes. Part 9. Community and Belonging, Sangha, in later years. The spiritual path is not meant to be walked alone. Even the Buddha, after his great enlightenment, did not disappear into the forest forever. He gathered companions. He formed a Sangha because he knew awakening may happen in solitude, but it is sustained in community. We need one another, not just for support, but for reflection, for grounding, for the sacred act of being seen. Story: Ruth at the Temple. I once visited a small Buddhist temple tucked behind pine trees in Vermont. After the meditation ended, people stayed, longer than usual. They poured tea, shared small snacks, talked softly. One woman, Ruth, sat beside me and smiled. "I come every week," she said. "Not for the teachings, not really, but because someone remembers my name." That line stayed with me, because in the end, Belonging is not about how many people know you. It's about knowing that someone notices when you're not there. It's about mattering. What is Sangha? In Buddhism, Sangha means spiritual community, but it doesn't require robes or incense. It doesn't need chanting or hierarchy. Sangha can be a circle of elders sharing stories. It can be a tea group in someone's kitchen. It can be two neighbors walking and listening to each other without rushing. Wherever there is presence, care, and truth, there is Sangha. The Buddha once said, "Admirable friendship, admirable companionship, admirable camaraderie. This is the whole of the holy life." He didn't say it was a part of the path. He said it was the path. Because we heal in relationship. We remember who we are when someone mirrors us back to ourselves with love, tending the heart by tending to others. And in later life, connection becomes even more vital. The kids may have grown, work might be done, schedules are quieter, but the heart still longs to share, to witness, to feel included. And the medicine is simple. Start a small tea circle once a week. Call an old friend you haven't spoken to in years. Join a local book club or walking group. Sit outside and strike up a gentle conversation with a neighbor. Volunteer, yes, even once a month, to read, serve, listen. These gestures are not small, they are threads, and together they weave a net of belonging strong enough to hold any season of life. A question for you. Who do you feel most yourself around? Not who impresses you, not who agrees with you, but who makes you feel like you can exhale fully. If someone comes to mind, reach out to them today, and if you can't think of anyone right now, that's okay too. Leave a comment. What's one simple way you can offer or invite connection this week? Maybe just write, "I'm ready to build community," because someone else reading may be ready too. A final reflection. We often think of spiritual practice as something private, but in truth, every shared laugh, every thoughtful question, every presence freely given is a sacred offering. You don't need a crowd. You don't need perfect words. You just need to show up with your heart open and your tea warm. Because in the end, community isn't about being popular. It's about being remembered, being received, and remembering that the path is gentler when walked together. Part 10. Designing a life of peace. There comes a point in life, quiet, unmistakable, when the question shifts from, "What can I get from life?" to, "What kind of life can I create?" And not out there, but in here. The need to achieve softens. The hunger to prove fades. And what remains is something far more powerful. A desire to build a life of meaningful stillness, of quiet joy, of peace. Not the kind that arrives by accident, but the kind we shape intentionally. Story. Thomas the firefighter. Thomas spent his life running into emergencies. He was a firefighter. He saved lives. He managed chaos. He was always needed, always rushing. But after retirement, when the pager stopped buzzing, he told me he felt adrift. No alarms, no urgency, just silence. He said, "For a while, I didn't know who I was without a fire to put out." But then, something shifted. He began walking every morning. No destination, no phone, just a small notebook. And on those walks, he wrote memories, haikus, reflections. One day, over tea, he smiled and said, "I used to put out fires. Now I light candles." That one sentence held so much. He didn't stop offering warmth to the world. He simply changed how. From reaction to intention. You see, so many of us live in reaction mode, responding to noise, deadlines, demands. But the Dharma teaches that peace is not something we wait for. It's something we plant over and over again. And that begins by asking, what kind of inner garden am I tending? Because even now, especially now, you're still designing your life, not with blueprints or checklists, but with attention, with choices, with presence, practice, the daily garden. Each morning, before the world rushes in, try asking yourself, what am I planting? A new habit? A gentle word? A moment of silence? What am I pruning? An old grudge? A draining commitment? A belief that no longer serves? What am I letting bloom without control, trust, forgiveness, wonder? These are the questions that cultivate peace, not all at once, but quietly, patiently, like a garden growing under morning dew. You don't need dramatic change. You need daily care, small shifts, repeated with love. That is how peace takes root. A question for you. If you could shape your life like a garden, what would you grow? What would you stop watering? And what would you finally let blossom? Leave a comment. Write just one seed you want to plant this week. Not for perfection, just for presence. A final reflection. The life you long for is not somewhere far ahead. It is already here, waiting for you to shape it with intention. And peace? Peace is not a destination. It's the result of many small decisions made with care. The food you eat, the way you breathe, the people you spend time with, the thoughts you choose to repeat. So begin now. Plant what you love. Release what weighs you down. Tend to your inner garden with gentleness and patience. Because you are no longer here to chase the world. You are here to design your own peace and to live inside of it. Conclusion. The most precious currency. You do not need more time. You need more presence. So, drink your tea slowly without checking the clock. Call someone whose voice you miss. Paint something, even if no one ever sees it. Write the letter you've been meaning to send. Breathe in the sky. Let go of the bitterness that no longer serves you, and forgive yourself for all the years spent rushing through what mattered most. Because the most sacred currency we hold is not money, not titles, not even time. It is attention, and how we spend it shapes the life we live. As the old Zen saying goes, each moment is a chance to begin again. So begin again, right here, right now, and now again. If today's reflection touched something inside you, like this video, so it may reach someone else who needs it, share it with a friend who's quietly searching, and comment with the word presence if you are choosing to live more fully, one mindful breath at a time. And of course, subscribe to Mindful Footsteps, where we walk not to arrive, but to awaken. Until next time, take care of your breath, take care of your heart, and take one more slow, sacred step into your life.